Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this live interactive teletown hall with Congresswoman Sara Jacobs. My name is Robin, and I'll be moderating the call this evening. As I mentioned, this is an interactive forum, and we'd love to hear from you this evening. During the call, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. We'll do our very best to answer as many of your questions as we possibly can this evening. To ask Congresswoman Jacobs a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad now or at any time during the call. You'll be connected directly with one of our staff members, and that staff member will take down your name, the city that you live in, and note your question. You'll then be added to the queue to ask your question. When you hear your name again, you'll be live on the call, and you'll be able to ask the Congresswoman your question directly. If you're streaming the event this evening, you can post your name and your question below the streaming player. Again, if you would like to ask the Congresswoman a question this evening, press *3 now or at any time during the call. With that, I'd like to turn the call over to your Congresswoman, Sara Jacobs. Congresswoman, you are live, and the floor is yours, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much, Robin. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being on the call tonight. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, and it has been snowing all day. So I really wish I was back in San Diego right now with all of you. But I'm really happy that we have this opportunity to have this dialogue with each other. And I'm really looking forward to answering your questions. So look, I know Iran is top of mind for our community right now because military conflicts aren't abstract or out of sight, out of mind for us in San Diego. It's our community, our service members who could be sent into harm's way and lose their lives. It's why I take issues of war and peace so seriously. I sit on both the House Foreign Affairs and the House Armed Services Committee, so I've been following this very closely. As you all know, over the weekend, the US and Israel launched military strikes in Iran with the goal of regime change. They killed Ayatollah Khamenei and others. And we have unfortunately already seen retaliation. We've seen the death of, at this time, 6 US service members. We have seen reports of numerous civilian casualties, including of children. Khamenei was a brutal dictator. No one should mourn his loss. I certainly do not. But there is no guarantee that the next leader will be better for the Iranian people or the United States. And now the US is in the middle of another war of choice in the Middle East that will drain our resources, pull our focus away from domestic issues, and risk retaliation and further anti-American sentiment. And by the way, none of this is authorized by Congress. The president hasn't even tried to make the case to us that this is necessary. So later this week, the House will vote on a war powers resolution on Iran, and I will vote yes to try and stop the Trump administration from taking further unilateral action in Iran. But I want to be clear about something because I feel like, we're not always having the same conversation. Trump didn't go about this the right way. But the more glaring issue is that US regime change and a military operation in Iran is a terrible idea that will not make the American people or the Iranian people better off. So, as you all know, we are also currently in a partial government shutdown right now because Republicans in Congress refuse to rein in ICE and Border Patrol. I voted against DHS funding, and I will continue to do so until we have serious guardrails and accountability measures for their actions. Our tax dollars should be spent on priorities like childcare, housing, education, and lowering costs for Americans, not on a blank check to ICE so they can terrorize and kill people. ICE and Border Patrol have killed at least 8 people this year already, including Alex Preti and Renee Good. And the data proves that they're not going after violent criminals. Actually, the vast majority of people arrested or detained by ICE do not have a criminal record. So Democrats are pushing for reforms like removing ICE from our cities, preventing them from wearing masks, protecting sensitive locations, and a full investigation into DHS-related deaths. We are not asking for very much. Honestly, I don't think we are asking for enough. I think there is a lot more we need to do, including impeaching Secretary Noem and dismantling and overhauling ICE and Border Patrol. And all of this is happening during our ongoing affordability crisis. I know how hard it is to afford rent, childcare and gas and groceries and utility bills. Basically everything right now is too expensive. And Trump's tariffs are making prices so unpredictable. The Supreme Court recently ruled that he didn't have the authority to enact tariffs under IEEPA. So now he's using another law to try and enact tariffs and is being sued again. So we are working from Congress to try and end these tariffs. But look, I also know that it is not enough to just be defending against what the Trump administration is trying to do. So I am working hard on putting together a bold, proactive agenda and plan specifically around childcare and housing to reduce costs when Democrats are back in power, because it won't be enough to just nibble around the edges. We cannot go back to the status quo, and there's a lot of work we need to do. So that's enough for me. From now, I want to make sure I'm answering all of your questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to all of you. Again, as Robin said, press *3 if you have a question for me, or type it into the chat interface. And I'm really looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We've got questions piling up here, and a few have come in from online. So our first question comes from Eric. He did submit the question online, ma'am. He asks, will you support Ro Khanna's and Thomas Macy's bipartisan war powers resolution to force Congress to limit Trump's illegal war?
Absolutely, yes. I will vote yes for Reps Khanna and Massey's resolution. The vote is likely to be this Thursday. And, I have long said that Congress needs to reassert our war powers and, the constitutional role that the founders gave us to declare war and peace. And that's true regardless of who the president is. But I think it's even more true now. So yes, I will be voting yes.
Thank you so very much. Our next question comes from Mary, and Mary asks, how do we hold Trump accountable for the chaos he is causing?
Well, Mary, I appreciate the question because it's something I've been thinking about a whole lot. I'll be honest, in the minority, we are limited in the tools that we have. We do not have subpoena power. We don't have investigative power. We cannot hold hearings. We don't have standing to sue in court. We are really limited in the minority in the House. The House is a very majoritarian system. If you have the majority of the votes, you can do almost anything, and we do not have the majority of the votes. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing we can do. So first, oversight is a really important part. I'm focused on showing up physically to conduct oversight, whether that's at the border or at OTI, because we know that oversight really does matter, and that often just by us showing up, they will change policies. We're also putting Republicans on the record for enabling Trump and keeping a record now to have real accountability when we're in the majority. And we're working with allies outside of Congress to make sure that they are doing some of the things that we can't do, like suing. And we are, making sure that we are working with all of you on the outside and listening to you and reminding you that your voices really matter. And I will say, when public pressure really works, when you all have made your voices heard, we have been able to get the Trump administration to change course. So I hope that you all will continue to do that.
Thank you so very much, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from Michael, and Michael says, please talk about the things you're doing for us locally. Is there anything new on the horizon? It seems like the entire party just talks about stopping Trump.
Look, I hear you. And I know that a big frustration from folks is that they feel like, oh, we're focused on right now is stopping Trump. And I'll be honest, he's doing so many bad things. It does take a lot of my time and energy to be defending against the things he's doing. And a lot of what he's doing is impacting us here locally, whether that's, what he's doing on immigration or on tariffs. But I've also been working on what we can do, particularly to address the childcare and housing crises, which are impacting us in San Diego more than almost anywhere else. I'm really focused on coming up with big, bold solutions on how we create a universal childcare system for our country, on how we cut through red tape and scale up building of housing. So we'll have more that we're laying out on that soon, but it's a big focus of mine. And then I've also, this past year, been able to bring over $14 million home for 14 local projects that help expand access to childcare and housing and infrastructure. So some examples of those projects are that I was able to get $2 million for the San Diego Housing Commission for the Linda Vista Affordable Housing redevelopment project. I was able to get $1.2 million for the city of San Diego to expand the safe sleeping pilot program, $500,000 for the San Miguel Consolidated Fire Protection District, $250,000 for the city of El Cajon to build the El Cajon Public Works Administration building. So I promise you, I am still focused on what we can deliver directly here at home while we're also fighting the big national issues.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Folks, if you've just joined the call and you'd like to ask the Congresswoman a question this evening, you can do so by pressing *3 on your telephone keypad now or at any time during the call. And if you're streaming the event this evening and you'd like to ask a question, simply type your name and your question below the streaming player. I'd like to remind you, nope, that's my reminder. Congressman, we're gonna open up the phones. We've got Mike from San Diego. Mike, you are live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, Mike.
Hi, thank you. My question is, are there any questions or any policies that you see that Trump is doing? I notice a lot of your rebuttals are just anti-Trump. Is there any policies that you see that you agree with?
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate the question. So there are a couple of things. One, I actually think that the president is doing the right thing on our policy towards Syria. I've been really impressed with how his administration has gone about that. The second thing I agree with him on is around IVF. He said he wants to be the fertility president, that he wants to expand access to IVF. And we are trying to figure out ways we can work with the White House to actually get that done and actually expand IVF and fertility access for people. And look, the president campaigned on childcare and housing. A number of the things he talked about in the State of the Union are things that I would support, like getting private equity out of our housing market. So I want to work with him on these things. We are still waiting to get kind of the specific policies he's proposing. But I will work with anyone to deliver for our community, and that includes President Trump.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Next question comes from Leanna of El Cerrito. Leanna, you're live on the call. Please go ahead, Leanna. Hi, Leanna, you're live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Hi. I just wanted to know what is to be done about for people who are on a single income, yet they struggle with housing and rent. I mean, I work in finance, and it's killing me that all I can afford and have is just a room for rent. I mean, we should be able to live in one bedrooms comfortably without having to squeeze with 3 to 4 different people. Are there any resources that can help us?
Well, again, I really appreciate the question, and I'm sorry you are struggling so much. And I'll be honest, like, this is the number one thing I hear from my constituents. San Diego is much too expensive. We need to fix it. We need to make it so that you can, if you work, a job, be able to afford a 1-bedroom or a home or whatever it is that you want. I grew up in San Diego. I went to high school here, and almost none of my friends from high school still live in San Diego because they literally can't afford to. And that's not good for our community. So, look, there's a lot of things we are trying to work on from Congress. There's the low-income housing tax credit that will help incentivize developers to build more housing. There's the Housing for the 21st Century Act, which I voted yes on, a bipartisan bill that passed the House overwhelmingly last month, and the Senate will be taking it up this week. That will expand affordable housing financing, increase FHA loan limits for multifamily homes, and create new grants to help local communities build more housing. Part of the $14 million I secured for us in San Diego is to help with redeveloping affordable housing and to expand safe sleeping pilot programs. Just last week, I introduced the Connecting Communities Through Transit Planning Act with Rep. Simon to build more housing near transit corridors. So there is work doing, but I'll level with you. Not enough is happening. It's not happening fast enough, and there's still so much we need to do. at every level of government, from federal, state, and local, to actually make housing affordable in San Diego. And I'm committed to making sure that we are working on this as hard as we possibly can.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Next caller is Ryan from El Cajon. Ryan, you're live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you so much. Big fan, Congresswoman. Love what you're doing. There's a lot of concerns, unfortunately, living in this country right now. One of my biggest, though, is are you and your fellow Democrats talking about how to kind of protect the security of the midterm elections? Because there's definitely real fears of meddling on Trump's side. So I wonder, is there plans to make sure that people can vote safely, securely, and that their votes will be counted? Because it looks like, hopefully, the midterms should be a pretty big blue wave, but I do not trust him and his administration to try to meddle and to monkey that up. So I was just wondering if that's a conversation that you guys have.
Yeah, well, Ryan, I appreciate you asking the question. It is definitely a conversation that we're having, and something that I'm thinking about a lot. And honestly, besides how expensive everything is the second thing I hear the most from my constituents these days. So I am not as worried about Donald Trump being able to specifically meddle in the election. And I'll tell you why. I mean, many of you know, before Congress, I worked in international conflict resolution around electoral violence. And, one of the things about our system here in the United States is that it's a very distributed system. Each state runs their own election, and within each state, each county runs their own election. And so it's pretty hard to just kind of flip a switch from Washington, D.C. and change things. And that distribution is actually what makes it more resilient. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that President Trump is going to try and do. We know there is. I was in the chamber on January 6th. We know that he will go to whatever ends he needs to try and steal an election. And this is an all hands on deck effort. So we are clear-eyed. I'm clear-eyed that he is going to try all of the things, and we need to be prepared to respond. So Hakeem Jeffries this week is actually convening the Democratic caucus so that we can have a conversation about this very issue. And we're going to be launching the largest voter protection effort that we've ever had for the midterm election. But, it's not just Congress, right? We're working with Democratic governors, state attorneys general, civil rights groups, unions, state and local officials, because we need to protect every voter's right to cast a ballot. And our Democratic state attorneys general are on the front lines, including our Attorney General Rob Bonta here in California, who is part of a coalition that is fighting to protect our voters and our elections from federal interference. And they've already blocked gerrymandering schemes and stopped the federalization of the National Guard. So there is a lot of work happening on this. And it's going to take all of us making our voices heard to make sure that we are actually able to vote in November.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Folks, again, if you would like to ask a question this evening, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. Next caller is George from Terra Santa. George, you're live on the call with Congresswoman Jacobs. Please go ahead, George. Hi, George.
Hey,
you're
how
live.
you doing,
Please
Congress? Yeah, hi, Congressperson Jacobs. How you doing? George from Tierra Santa. So I'm curious. I've been on several of your live stream town halls, and I was curious, what are you doing personally to try to bring Republicans or people that are more right of center over to, the thoughts of the Democrats? I mean, every time I listen to the news, whether it's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, the Democrats are being divisive with the Republicans. The Republicans are being divisive with the Democrats. And it's almost like all you guys do is spend your time fighting, blaming each other, resisting. When are you guys going to work together for the people?
Well, George, thank you for the question. And most importantly, thank you for continuing to show up and continuing to ask questions, because that's a big piece of it. Look, I know it looks from the outside like all we do is fight with each other. And I'll be honest, on like the super political issues, there is a lot of fighting in Congress. But if you kind of go one level down from the super political issues, there's actually more bipartisan work happening than I think ever before, or at least in a very long time. And part of that is because the Republican majority is so small that if we can get two or three, depending on the day, Republicans to work with us on certain things, we're actually able to get a lot done. So I'll give you one example, which is that I've been working really hard to get TRICARE, the military insurance program, to cover IVF and fertility treatments. And this is a broad bipartisan coalition working on getting this done. And we were very, very close this year. We weren't able to get it over the finish line in this year's National Defense Authorization Act, but we then introduced a bipartisan bill, standalone bill, that would do that. And now we're working on getting support for that. So there's actually a lot that I'm working on that is bipartisan. And, particularly on the Armed Services Committee, we have to build coalitions across the aisle. Supporting our troops isn't and shouldn't be partisan. And a lot of what I work on in a bipartisan way is through the Armed Services Committee. But, I also think that, first of all, I know that if you watch the news on TV, it feels like all we're doing is like political posturing and arguing. And actually, most people don't get their news from the television anymore. Most people get their news from their friends and family. They get their news from social media. And a lot of what I've been trying to do on my social media is like explain what's going on, really humanize the issues. Because I do find that that is a really important way for us having this conversation, because so often we're talking in the abstract about policies, but when we're actually talking about real human situations, most of us actually agree. We might disagree on how to get there, but we agree on kind of the basics. And I honestly think most San Diegans agree on more than we think. They think that rent and childcare is too expensive. They think that we need to be addressing safety, right? Like there is a lot of common ground, and I really try and reach to that. And a big part of how I try and represent is that I try and show up everywhere and listen to everyone. And I'm fine when we don't agree with things. I will tell you when we don't agree on things, but I will always show up and I will always respect you. And I would rather you trust me than, think that we agree on every issue and then later feel betrayed because I gave you some sort of mealy-mouthed answer. And so, often people are, very overwhelmed with what's happening at the federal level these days. And I completely understand it is overwhelming. But when people ask me what they can be doing, I tell them to go local, right? Go pick up trash, go paint a park in your neighborhood, go help a neighbor who needs help with groceries. Like, I really believe that we're going to rebuild the social fabric, the fabric of our country, bottom up, neighbor by neighbor, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community. And it's going to take all of us doing those little things that make us a community to build back our country. It's not going to come from the top down. And I try and show up and do all of that as much as I can too when I'm home.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next caller is George from Spring Valley. George, you're live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, George.
Well, thank you very much. Sarah, I think you're doing a wonderful job. I've followed your career for a while, and you didn't need to get into politics, but I'm glad you did. I've noticed, let me say this, I'm 83 years old. I'm an attorney, and before that I was in broadcasting and worked with and hired many of the people that most people know in San Diego County. As such, I was involved with some of the campaigns for various politicians that were in this area. And one thing I can say is, first of all, I really have never known any Republican politician, when all was said and done, didn't really have policies that helped the poor or the middle class even. They were always for the rich, the people that had things to protect and either to keep the way things were, in other words, to conserve what was or is, and not to allow people that wanted to get over or get up to keep them from doing so. In other words, I've got mine. Too bad you don't have yours, and we're not going to let you have it. The Democrats, on the other hand, are trying to find ways to elevate people's status in life and their situation. I mean, how else could a person get better if it's not through helping others and being part of the solution and using their abilities and their thinking and their work to come up with ideas and produce more? And that's recognized and supported, and you finally get a situation where people prosper, a community prospers, a county, a state, ultimately a nation. And ever since Ronald Reagan was elected back in 1980, I've just seen this country going in the wrong direction. The unions were broken up by Reagan. The air controllers union, he started there, and union after union fell by the wayside. And third-party providers and manufacturers and everything else came in. No longer could a man work for 40 years or 35 or whatever and get a gold watch and a good retirement. No. He had, they wouldn't let you work that long, or you couldn't get a 40-year work schedule. They'd give you 39 hours, not 40. In other words, we started, it just was a constant whittling away of all of the rights that working people had. And people didn't really realize it at the time, but it became more and more and more apparent that we really needed some champions for the people that were losing their rights. They didn't know it, and sometimes they were even fooled into going with people like Donald Trump, who I think he's fantastic as a comedian and as somebody that can get a whole bunch of people to follow him over like lemmings to the sea. I mean, he's so he could change this conversation. He could. I don't know if he didn't start this war with Iran just so people won't look at the Epstein files with any more clarity.
George, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure I get a chance to answer your question and
oh yes,
everyone else.
I'm so sorry, Sarah. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'll shut up right now. One of my
No, that's okay. Do you have a question?
Yes. Do you know if you have any plans to get dental insurance for seniors who have Medicare, but they don't have Medi-Cal, and they easily qualify for Medi-Cal, but they don't have it. They only have Medicare. Therefore, like in my case, I have a terrible toothache, but I can't get a way to get it done. And I'm actually a poor man. I've been very wealthy at times, but then things happen and things change. That's how life is. So what can you do to help seniors who only have Social Security as an income stream? They don't have large savings. They're not in a large savings situation where they have money and all of that, or stocks and bonds and everything else. They just have a basic mobile home and an old truck and a few, things in his mobile, but they don't have the ability to pay out of pocket for the dentistry. And I'm getting worn down with that. I need help, and I need something. I need your help, Sarah.
Yeah. Well,
For that.
George, I'm so sorry that you're going through all of that, and I so appreciate all of your kind words and your the long history you've lived through. Look, we are trying to figure out how we can add dental to Medicare. Right now, we're in the minority, so we're really just trying to protect things, and obviously, you all know what happened with Medi-Cal in the one big ugly bill that the Republicans passed. Um, but if you are struggling to access the benefits you've earned, um, please call my office at 619-280-5353. We will try and help you, and if not, we can try and give you a list of nonprofits who may be able to help.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Our next caller is Christopher from San Diego. Christopher, you're live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, Christopher.
Hi, Sarah. Hello?
Hi. Hi.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to talk to you again. Me and my nieces spent like 2 hours talking to you at the March for Our Lives event. It's nice to talk to you again. Real quick, I just had a quick question. With the recent escalation in tensions over in the Middle East, including the joint military strikes and like the rapid response, many people around the United States and the world are wondering why the military force seems to be the only response from us rather than kind of sustained diplomacy, especially given the mixed global perception of our current leadership in the United States. So in your view, how does a democratic nations justify military intervention as the only way? And what paths exist for mitigating fear and prioritizing diplomatic solutions given this specific situation?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. And I too am pretty horrified that, President Trump has gone straight to this military action when, in fact, I think that the diplomatic approach would have been much more successful in the long term. And we heard even as recently as Friday that, in fact, the diplomatic negotiations were making progress. And instead of President Trump actually giving them time to work, he decided to engage in this bombing campaign instead. I wish I could tell you oh, we're going to stop it or, why it's happening. I disagree with it. I wish we had given diplomacy a real chance. I supported the diplomatic agreement that we'd had previously that, while imperfect, was actually preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Of course, Donald Trump pulled us out of that and then didn't like the world that he created. And so he's trying to bomb his way out of that. And I'm really concerned about what this means, not just for the future of Iran and the Middle East, but actually the future of the United States in the world and how our allies and partners and countries all over the world view the United States and view whether or not we are sort of a partner that they want to work with.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Folks, we had mentioned earlier, this is an interactive call. We have a question for you this evening. And we thank you for joining the call, number one. But if you'd like to stay up to date on the Congresswoman's work, we invite you to press 1 on your telephone keypad to subscribe to her e-newsletter. Again, that's press 1 on the keypad if you would like to subscribe to the Congresswoman's e-newsletter and stay up to date with what she's currently working on. Congresswoman, next question comes from Lauren of La Mesa. Lauren, you're live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, Lauren.
Hello. Thank you so much for being my representative. I feel that we are very aligned in what we want to achieve for this nation. My question is, I feel that the LGBT equality has been under attack in certain states, and today was again another incident where that happened. and I wanted to know what you felt could be done to protect the rights for equality for the LGBT community.
Well, Lauren, thank you for the question. Many of you all know this is an issue that's deeply personal to me. My youngest sibling is trans, and my middle sibling is gender nonconforming. And actually, my little brother is pregnant and due any day now, so I will get a new little nephew any minute, and I'm super excited about that. Um, Look, I'll be honest. I mean, there's so many hard things right now, but one of the things that's really hard for me is that because we're in the triple minority, because of all of the horrible things the Trump administration is trying to do, we're really playing defense, and the best we can do is try and stop bad things from happening. And we've actually been able to do some of that. We were able to get most of the really horrible anti-trans riders out of the appropriations bills this year, which was a tough fight, but we were able to get it done. Um, and we're working with folks on the outside who are fighting back in the courts and have been largely successful there, including our California Attorney General Rob Bonta. Um, One of the ways I'm focused on this most specifically is with the military. As a member of the Armed Services Committee, I'm spending a lot of time trying to protect our trans service members who served our country with honor and are now being targeted and kicked out. And we have been trying to get the Equality Act passed and enshrined into law since I've been in Congress, and we will keep pushing that and hopefully be able to get it done when we're back in the majority. But I want everyone to know if you are facing discrimination or losing access to documents or services because of who you are, please reach out to my office. We will help you navigate this. If you are in the military and being targeted, please reach out to my office. We want to be a resource for you. We cannot stop all of the bad things, but we will do everything we can to try and help you as much as we possibly can. You can reach out to us
Thank you.
at 1-280-5353.
Thank you. That's you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to ask you to repeat the phone. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from Mark of Lemon Grove. Mark, you're live on the call with Congresswoman Jacobs. Please go ahead, Mark.
Hello. Hi. I just wanted to start by saying thanks for having me. This is awesome. This is like, I've got to work a ton, and so being able to stay civically engaged while just in my house is awesome. I love it. So, as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and specifically a ranking member of the Subcommittee on Africa, I know there's like a limited amount of money, effort, and sort of like focus that can be put on all of the world events. But I'm wondering, is there any talk within the federal government about how the U.S. can aid either diplomatically or with resources to the civil conflict in South Sudan?
Yeah, well, Mark, thank you, and I'm so glad that you were able to participate. We try and do these town halls in different methods and at different times so that everyone is able to get to participate, and I'm glad that worked for you. The administration says they are working on a peace deal in Sudan. So far, we've not really seen any success from that. I've had many conversations with them trying to get more information on what they are trying to do and, make sure that it is something that will actually end the war. Um, right now, a lot of the work we're doing is to try and just keep the aid flowing in to make sure that food and medicine is being accessed and to protect the tools that are working, like these targeted sanctions and humanitarian access and diplomacy. So, for me, one of the most important things is that we recognize that the regional partners are the regional countries are a big part of what is continuing to drive this conflict forward. And that's why I think we need um, real account real accountability for countries who are arming and funding the sides in this conflict, particularly the UAE, and I've introduced legislation that would say that the UAE can no longer get U.S. arms sales until they stop funding and arming the RSF, one of the parties in this conflict. Um, I keep working on and hoping that we can get to a civilian endgame where we're supporting civilian-led governance, and not just feeding into these two warring parties, but we are a far way away from that. So the short answer is there is some progress, but not enough, and we're continuing to push the Trump administration to give this the focus that it requires and to make sure that they're actually holding folks accountable who are continuing to arm and fund this war.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Folks, there's still time to ask your question. If you'd like to ask the Congressman a question this evening, press *3 on your telephone keypad. Congresswoman, the next question was submitted online by Rogelio, and he asks, why don't you enforce, enhance, support, and strengthen laws to remove non-American undocumented individuals currently in this country? The social programs used by these groups is an immoral economic burden on American taxpayers.
Rogelio, I hear your concerns about costs, but I think we also need to sort of make sure that we're all understanding what's actually happening. So, um, this administration is not actually going after undocumented criminals. They are canceling TPS protections. So people who literally came in legally and got for asylum and got protected status, they're canceling naturalization hearings where people have gone through the process correctly the whole way and are about to get their citizenship. They're literally arresting people at their own green card appointment. So they're targeting people who are trying to do it the right way. Now, I think another thing that people maybe don't recognize enough is that undocumented immigrants actually do pay taxes. In fact, in 2022, they paid an estimated $96.7 billion in federal, state, and local taxes. And they're contributing to programs they're never going to get. For instance, they contribute to Social Security. They will never be able to collect Social Security. So that is not actually a drain. In fact, in many ways, you could think of the fact that undocumented immigrants are actually subsidizing our social safety net programs because they are paying in and they will never get to receive the benefits. So I support an orderly and humane process at the border. What I don't support is ICE killing 8 people this year, raiding churches and schools, and terrorizing communities. And that does not actually make us safer, and it does not save taxpayers money. It costs more. We are actually seeing people are not going to school. People are not showing up to their jobs. People are not reporting crimes because they are so afraid that if they do, they will be picked up by immigration instead of actually helping our public safety. This immigration crackdown is making things worse. So look, we need real immigration reform, okay? We do need an orderly and humane process at the border. We in San Diego have paid the consequences of not having one. But we've also paid the consequences of my entire life not having passed a single improvement or reform to immigration, right? We need to fix the backlog. We need to create more legal pathways. That's how we solve this, not by mass deportation and militarized raids.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next caller is Stephen from La Mesa. Stephen, you're live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, Congresswoman Jacobs. What an honor, and I'm a big supporter of yours, and thank you for all that you do. I'll try to be as concise as possible because there are so many questions that I'd love to be able to ask, and I'll try to wrap it up into a couple of main ones. But from my view, we've always been a kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 steps backwards kind of a country. And as a member of the LGBTQ community, the pace has always been a little slower than I would prefer, but it's fine as long as we were moving forward. But this administration has done so much so fast to destroy the programs and the benefits of so many communities outside and beyond the LGBTQ community. Sorry, that's a tongue twister for me right now because I'm a little nervous talking to you. But people are very
That's okay. I have a hard
disillusioned.
time saying it too.
People are very disillusioned right now, and I would never support the Republican Party, especially as it stands right now. But I believe that Democrats have to give people a reason to vote at all right now. Again, so many things have been done to hurt so many communities, and people are angry and upset, and rightfully so. And there's been so much criminality involved in a lot of the things he's done and the grifting he's done. So for any Democrat who's running now and in 2028, I'm hoping we win back the House. I'm hoping we win the Senate. And in 2028, I'm hoping it's my personal preference would be Pete Buttigieg as the nominee, but I'm expecting it to be Newsom, and I'm hoping he's strong enough to pick Buttigieg for his running mate and or put him on the Supreme Court if he wins. But I want to get back to the time where Democrats and Republicans work together. But any person that I vote for now, I would like to hear, we want to get back to the way things used to be in government, where we disagreed, but we worked together to come up to compromise. But especially for any presidential or person running as president or wins the presidency in 2028, I hate to use the word retribution, but I'd like to hear people say, I want to get back to doing things how we used to do, but not yet. So many things have to be done to right the ship of all the negative things that Trump has done. Personally, I think he belongs in prison, but more than anything, whether he goes to prison or not, I want him impeached, and whatever happens beyond that happens. But I want to go after all the money that they've grifted off the government. And I'd like to hear, I'm not a nasty person. I'm not a hateful person, but I want to hear elected representatives tell me what they're going to do to make up for the things that he's done and to go after him for the wrongs that he's done and the money he's made and his cronies have made off of the American people using the government to enrich themselves. And I'm sorry to have been so long, but people are very disillusioned right now, and they need a reason to vote. And righting the ship, and promising to right the ship, and to go after the wrongs that have been done by everybody, even including the people in the Epstein files. Again, there's so many questions wrapped up into one, but I hope you understood the gist of what I'm saying, and I'd like you to respond to that if you could, please.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, I really appreciate that question because I think restoring faith and trust in government and institutions and leaders is the most important thing that we can be doing right now. And a big piece of being able to restore faith and trust in government and institutions is having real accountability, which is, I think, what you're asking for, right? And many of you know that, I worked in international conflict resolution, and we know from other countries that actually real accountability is a really important part of being able to move forward. And so obviously in the triple minority, that's harder for us to do right now, but we are building the record. We are making sure that we have the receipts. We are forcing votes to put Republicans on the record. We're conducting oversight on the ground. We're filing legal challenges through our state attorneys general. And we are working on that so that when we get the majority, when we have subpoena power, we will be able to do real investigations and real actual accountability as quickly as possible, and hopefully be able to have investigations and things ready to go that we can turn over to a Democratic president and administration in 2029. And so I think that it is important that we have accountability. I think actually having accountability is an important way that we do bring everyone back together. I actually don't think that they're in tension with each other. I think they are two sides of the same coin.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Next caller is Tim from San Diego. Tim, you are live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, Tim.
Hi, Congresswoman Jacobs. I am sitting on a plane about to return to San Diego, so if you hear some loud noises in the background, that's the announcement. So I apologize for that. So, assuming that the Democrats will return to power after the midterms, what is the strategy when talking about the Epstein cases as far as getting the things that have been redacted released and holding people accountable up to and including the president?
Yeah, well, Tim, thank you for doing this call from the airplane. I've been in your shoes many times, so I know it's can be hard to balance all of that. So I appreciate you tuning in. Look, I believe very strongly that everyone who enabled Epstein's crimes, who participated in the crimes, should be held accountable, regardless of party, regardless of position, no exceptions, everyone. And I support full transparency on the Epstein files. I think it's important for survivors who deserve justice and for the public who deserves the truth, and no one should be protected because of their wealth or connections. So, as you know, Congress passed the Bipartisan Epstein Transparency Act that mandated the release of all the files. DOJ has not actually complied with that. They've only released 3.5 million pages of heavily redacted files when we know that there are over 6 million total pages and roughly 200,000 pages have been redacted or withheld entirely. Now, members of Congress can now go view unredacted files at the DOJ. But even in that room, lawmakers have found documents that are still redacted, and they are monitoring everything that we are looking for. And that's still only the pages that have already been released, those 3.5 million, not the additional ones. So we need to put on continued bipartisan pressure, and we need to make sure we are pushing DOJ to justify every single redaction under the law, because the law is clear. Nothing can be withheld on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. I have spent time with survivors. They are an incredibly inspiring bunch. And they deserve justice, and they want justice, and they want this information to come out. And so that's what we're doing now. When we're in the majority, we'll have even more tools and more power to be able to get those files out and to get justice. And we're going to keep pushing on this because, people don't get two sets of rules in this country. You don't get to evade the law because you're rich and powerful. We should all have the same rules, and everyone needs to be held accountable.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Folks, again, if you're enjoying this update and you want to stay up to date with what the Congresswoman is working on, you can press 1 on your telephone keypad to subscribe to Congresswoman Jacobs' e-newsletter. That's 1 on your telephone keypad if you would like to subscribe to the Congresswoman's e-newsletter. Congresswoman, we're creeping up on the top of the hour. We have time for one more question before I invite you for your closing remarks, ma'am. We have Sylvester from San Carlos. Sylvester, you are live on the call with Congresswoman Sara Jacobs. Please go ahead.
Hey, hello. How are you doing? I'm glad to hear that you were doing some things to address the large media bias that kind of suffocates the actual democratic message. So I'm glad you're at least trying to address that. My question is, what are some policies the Democratic Party and yourself are going to do about the unprecedented Republican transfer of wealth from the rich, or from the poor to the rich, or from the bottom to the top, and the overall oligarchic tone of our current government?
Yeah, well, Sylvester, I appreciate the question. I'm sure that you know that the Republicans' one big ugly bill actually was the single biggest wealth transfer from the poor to the wealthy in our country. And I obviously voted against it. And part of what I want to do when we are back in power is repeal the tax cuts for the wealthy and close the loopholes that let billionaires pay lower tax rates than everyone else, and make corporations pay their fair share. I'm sure many of you know, I grew up very privileged. I am very lucky for everything that our San Diego community gave to me and my family. It's why I try and spend as much of time as I can trying to make the system fairer for everyone else, because I believe everyone should have access to the kinds of opportunities I was given, and you shouldn't just have to come from a family like mine. So I introduced a bill called the Legacy Act, which would cut the estate tax exemption in half and use a percentage of that revenue to fund childcare. It would literally reduce my own inheritance, but wealthy families like mine didn't build our wealth alone, and we shouldn't hoard it while working families can't afford childcare. So, I think there's something poetic at the end of someone's life to funding to make sure that every kid has a good start to their life. And I'll keep looking for other ways that we can address the real inequality in our system.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And I told a little bit of a fib. We have time for one more. We've got a tiny bit of time left. So let's go ahead and take Keith from Normal Heights. Keith, you are live on the call with the Congresswoman. Please go ahead, Keith.
Thank you. Hi, Sarah. We're big fans and very proud of you. I know it must be very difficult because it hasn't been fixed, but what is the main obstacle in repairing the sewage at the border?
Yeah, well, Keith, it's a good question. So, as you probably know, since 2020, our congressional delegation has secured over $650 million to upgrade the South Bay wastewater treatment plant. Once that upgrade is completed, it will double capacity and cut cross-border flows by 90%. It broke ground in 2024, and we are doing a lot of oversight to make sure that it is done quickly and it is done well, and we do not end up in the same situation again. Um, a lot of the challenge is that the scale and cross-border complexity, right? So it requires Mexico's cooperation, massive infrastructure, and sustained dollars. And honestly, the federal government has ignored it for too long. So part of what we're trying to do is make sure that once we get this wastewater treatment plant set up, we have the operations and maintenance funding continued so that, again, we don't end up in the same place. So we just got another $3.5 million to dredge Smuggler's Gulch. We are pushing the CDC to open a health investigation into air quality around Imperial Beach and Coronado, and that study is underway. And Mexico has commitments that they are doing, including a new wastewater treatment plant that we are holding them to. So again, this is one where I will work with everyone. I toured the plant with EPA Administrator Zeldin and our full bipartisan delegation, and we're going to keep working hard as a San Diego delegation to try and get this done because I share your frustration. It is ridiculous that it has taken this long.
Congresswoman, thank you so much. And before we end the call this evening, would you like to share any thoughts with your constituents about this evening's call or anything else you might have on your mind?
Yes, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I know that times are tough for so many people in our community, but showing up to things like this is literally one of the most important things you can do. And remember, I'm here. I'm in Washington fighting to make our government and our country actually work and deliver for all of us. And you can always reach my office by calling 619-280-5353 or going to my website at sarajacobs.house.gov. Thank you again so much for joining, and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining this evening's telephone town hall with Congresswoman Sara Jacobs. If you'd like to stay up to date on the Congresswoman's work, you can follow her on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Rep. Sara Jacobs. You can also follow her on Blue Sky at sarajacobs.house.gov. And if you would like to subscribe to her e-newsletter, simply stay on the line this evening, leave your name and email address after the tone. Thanks again, and have a blessed evening. Good night.